Alright, I've come with an incredible list today, so sit back and watch carefully. Number 7. Conformal Cyclic Cosmology. When you ask what came before the Big Bang, your mind does what every human mind does. It reaches for a beginning. You picture a void, a silence, a darkness so complete that nothing exists inside it, and then a spark, and then everything. That narrative feels satisfying because human consciousness is built around causality. Things come from other things. Events have predecessors. The universe must have had a starting point, a moment zero, a first cause. It is one of the deepest intuitions our species possesses, and it is almost certainly wrong. Sir Roger Penrose, one of the most decorated mathematical physicists alive, a man who shared the Nobel Prize for his work on black holes alongside Stephen Hawking, has spent decades developing a theory that doesn't just challenge this intuition, it surgically dismantles it, and replaces it with something that, the more you understand it, the more it refuses to leave you alone. His theory is called Conformal Cyclic Cosmology, and its central claim is this: the beginning of our universe and the end of the universe that came before it are not two separate events separated by a void. They are mathematically identical. They are the same moment, described from two different directions. To understand why, you have to follow our universe forward to its absolute end. Trillions of years from now, the last stars will exhaust their fuel and go dark. Galaxies will dissolve into black, expanding clouds. The only remaining objects will be supermassive black holes, slowly feeding on the last drifting particles of matter, growing colder and more isolated as the universe expands around them. Over timescales measured in googolplex years, those black holes will evaporate through Hawking radiation until the last one dissolves into a final faint whisper of energy and is gone. What remains is a universe containing nothing but massless particles, photons, gravitons, drifting through an endlessly expanding void with no structure, no matter, no complexity of any kind. And here is where Penrose's mathematics produces its vertigo-inducing result. For a massless particle, time does not pass. A photon traveling at the speed of light experiences no duration whatsoever. In a universe composed entirely of massless particles, the concepts of scale, of large and small, of past and future, lose all physical meaning entirely. The ending state of a universe that has died and the starting state of a universe about to be born are the same mathematical object. The heat death of the previous eon didn't just precede our Big Bang, it was our Big Bang. Penrose and his colleagues searched the cosmic microwave background for what they call Hawking points, anomalous concentric rings of energy, the gravitational scars left behind by the evaporation of supermassive black holes, in the universe that existed before ours. Some physicists claim to have found exactly these rings in the data. If they are right, then the empty space you see when you look up at the night sky isn't the first iteration of reality. We are living in the ghostly graveyard of a previous cosmos. We are not the beginning of time. We are one more tick in a clock that has no first tick and will have no last. Number 6. Quantum fluctuation. From nothing. Human beings cannot function without causality. The entire architecture of consciousness, memory, planning, language, meaning, is built on the assumption that things come from other things, that effects have causes, that nothing appears without something producing it. This is not a philosophical preference. It is the operating system of the human mind. Quantum mechanics does not care. At the subatomic level, the most precisely tested theory in the history of science describes a reality where causality dissolves completely. Particles appear from nothing. They borrow energy from the void for intervals so brief that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle allows the debt to go unpaid, and then they vanish back into the nothing they came from. This is not theoretical. We can measure the physical pressure exerted by these phantom particles on metal plates in a laboratory. They are real, they are doing things, and they came from nowhere. Now hold that fact in your mind and scale it upward by every order of magnitude that exists. Our universe, with its 400 billion galaxies, its 15 billion year history, its stars and planets and oceans and consciousness, did not come from something. It came from a quantum fluctuation in a void that had no space, no time, no prior cause, and no reason to produce anything at all. Before the Big Bang, there was no darkness. There was not even a nothing that could be described as nothing, because description requires time and space, and neither existed. There was a quantum vacuum, a state of pure mathematical potential, timeless and dimensionless. And in that state, a microscopic bubble of space-time fluctuated into existence. By pure statistical accident, this specific bubble contained a configuration of vacuum energy that triggered inflation. Space began doubling in size every fraction of a second, locked into existence before the void could correct itself. And here is the number that should sit in your chest like a stone. The total energy of our universe is 0. The positive energy of all the matter and radiation that exists is exactly cancelled by the negative energy of all the gravitational fields pulling that matter together. The universe is, in the most literal sense physics can produce, a free lunch. We are not the product of a cause. We are the product of a moment when nothingness became briefly unstable, inflated before it could correct itself, and accidentally locked a set of physical laws into existence that would, 15 billion years later, produce a species capable of working all of this out. Number 5. Loop quantum cosmology. The singularity is the most embarrassing object in modern physics. When you run the expansion of our universe backward, the mathematics converges toward an infinitely dense, infinitely hot point, where the laws of physics produce answers of infinity, the mathematical equivalent of a theory raising its hands and admitting it has no idea what is happening. The Big Bang theory cannot look into the singularity, it just stops, producing infinities where answers should be. Like a calculator displaying an error code at the most important calculation in the history of science. Loop quantum gravity proposes that spacetime is not a smooth, continuous fabric. Just as matter is made of atoms rather than being infinitely divisible, space itself is quantized, woven from finite, indivisible loops with a minimum possible size called the Planck length. You cannot compress space into a volume smaller than this limit. It is not a practical barrier, it is a fundamental one. The mathematics will not permit it. Now imagine our universe collapsing in reverse. Galaxies rushing inward. The universe shrinking, growing denser, growing hotter. In the standard model, this collapse continues into infinity. But in loop quantum cosmology, the universe hits a physical roadblock. At the absolute limit of compression, gravity does not continue to pull inward. It becomes repulsive, with a force so extreme that the entire mass of a collapsing cosmos rebounds instantaneously outward. The Big Bang was not a beginning, it was a rebound. Before our Big Bang there was not a void, there was a universe, perhaps vast and ancient, perhaps containing galaxies and stars and forms of complexity we cannot imagine, that expanded, slowed, reversed, and fell inward over billions of years until it crushed itself to the quantum limit and exploded outward into us. The cycle has no beginning that physics can find. It has no end that mathematics permits. It is just collapse and bounce and expansion and collapse, forever. And we are somewhere in the middle of one iteration, briefly conscious, briefly able to ask the question, briefly here. Number 4. The Ekpyrotic brain collision model. To understand this, you have to genuinely accept that the 3 spatial dimensions you can perceive are not all the spatial dimensions that exist. Our entire universe exists on the surface of a 3-dimensional membrane, a brain, floating through a higher dimensional space called the bulk. We are as confined to our brain as a drawing is confined to the surface of a piece of paper, completely unaware of the 3-dimensional room that paper floats through. But the room is not empty. Other brains exist in the bulk. Other universes, parallel to ours, separated not by distance in any direction we can point to, but by an offset in a dimension we cannot access. A weak attractive force, gravity, leaking through the higher dimensions, slowly draws parallel universes toward each other across the bulk. As they approach, quantum ripples form on their surfaces. Then they make contact. 2 infinite parallel universes collide across the 4th spatial dimension. The kinetic energy of the impact is instantaneously converted into matter and radiation, flooding both brains with a superheated plasma. What we observe as the Big Bang was the moment 2 invisible membranes struck each other. After the collision, the brains bounce apart and begin drifting away from each other. The expansion of our universe that we observe today is the aftermath of that bounce, but the attractive force between them persists. Our universe will continue expanding, growing thinner and colder, until it is once again a near-empty brain drifting through the bulk. Then the brains will begin pulling toward each other again. They will collide again. And whatever remains of us by then will be erased completely and replaced by a new universe that will never know we existed. There is no escape from this. It is not a possibility. It is a prediction. Number 3. Eternal inflation. The standard theory of cosmic inflation explains why the observable universe is so incredibly uniform and flat. But when physicists like Alan Guth and André Linde followed its mathematics further than comfort allows, they found something inside it that the theory itself seems almost designed to hide. Once inflation starts, it is mathematically almost impossible to make it stop everywhere at once. Before our Big Bang, space was a high-energy field called the false vacuum, expanding exponentially, doubling in size every inconceivably small fraction of a second. In this violently expanding ocean of false vacuum, quantum fluctuations would occasionally cause local regions to decay to a lower energy state. When a region decayed, the excess energy was dumped into that region as a massive pulse of heat and matter. Space stopped inflating there. That region became a universe. Our universe is one of those regions. But outside our bubble, in every direction at distances so vast that the expansion of the false vacuum has carried them beyond any horizon we could ever reach, the inflation never stopped. It is still happening. Right now, the false vacuum is still expanding, still generating new universes at a rate that makes the concept of number meaningless. We are sealed inside one specific bubble, drifting in an eternally inflating ocean of reality that surrounds us in every direction and that we will never, under any circumstances, be able to reach or observe. Number 2, the CPT Symmetric Universe. Among the fundamental laws of physics, there exists a symmetry so deep and so mathematically necessary that quantum mechanics essentially demands it. Flip all three properties simultaneously. Swap matter for antimatter. Mirror all space, reverse time. And the mathematics of quantum mechanics guarantees the universe must behave identically. This symmetry is not optional. It is a mathematical requirement, and our universe violates it so comprehensively that its violation is one of the deepest unsolved problems in physics. A groundbreaking theory proposes the only answer that balances the equation. The CPT symmetry of our universe is satisfied not within our universe, but by a second universe that was created simultaneously with ours at the Big Bang, a mirror image that exists in the opposite temporal direction. Picture the Big Bang not as the beginning of a single timeline, but as the center point of an hourglass. At the singularity, reality split in two opposite directions simultaneously. In one direction, our direction, a universe made of matter expanded forward in time, building stars and galaxies and eventually consciousness. In the other direction, a universe made of antimatter expanded backward in time. Not backward into our past, but in the opposite temporal direction entirely, accumulating its own history, its own complexity, all flowing away from the singularity in a direction that has no name in our language, because nothing in our experience corresponds to it. This theory resolves the mystery of the missing antimatter. But its psychological weight lies elsewhere. The void before the Big Bang was not empty space, it was not darkness. It was the temporal history of another universe, flowing backward away from the moment of our creation, building its own reality in the mirrored direction of time, as real as ours, as complex as ours, as unreachable as if it existed in a separate dimension. We are half of reality. The other half is moving away from us at the speed of time itself, and every second we step forward, they step backward, and the distance between us is not space, but the most fundamental asymmetry in the structure of existence. Number 1. The multiverse string landscape. This is the absolute limit. Not the limit of what we know, but the limit of what human mathematics can currently reach toward, straining at the edge of formalism, producing answers so large and so strange that the physicists who derived them spent years checking whether they had made an error, and then spent more years coming to terms with the fact that they hadn't. String theory requires additional dimensions of space, not metaphorically, but physically. The mathematics only works in 10 or 11 dimensions. The specific shape of the hidden dimensions determines every number in every equation that describes how reality operates. Change the geometry, and you change the laws of physics completely. The mathematics of string theory produces approximately 10 to the power of 500 possible geometries, a 1 followed by 500 zeros, a number so incomprehensibly massive that it dwarfs the total number of atoms in our observable universe. Each geometry represents a different possible universe with a different set of physical laws. According to eternal inflation, each one is not just possible, but actual, a real bubble universe somewhere in the eternally inflating multiverse. The vast majority of these universes are immediately and completely hostile to any form of complexity. In a universe where gravity is slightly stronger, the Big Bang collapses back into a singularity before a single atom forms. In a universe where the strong nuclear force is slightly weaker, atoms can never form. Out of 10 to the 500 configurations, the overwhelming majority produce nothing. And out of the vanishingly small fraction that allow atoms, that allow stars, that allow the long, slow process of stellar nucleosynthesis to produce the elements that biology requires, we are one. Not because anything selected us, not because the universe was built for us, but because in a landscape of 10 to the 500 possibilities, the ones that can produce observers will produce observers who wonder why the laws of physics permit their existence. There is no ground beneath this. The void before our Big Bang was not darkness. It was an eternal, churning, hyperdimensional engine of mathematical possibility. And it still is, and it always will be. We are not the universe's purpose. We are a rounding error in the decimal expansion of a number so large it has no meaning. We grew in the one microscopic crack in the mathematical landscape where the geometry happened to permit us. And the landscape will continue producing realities that will never know we were here. For more content like this, don't forget to like the video and turn on notifications. Now click on the video on the screen and don't forget to subscribe.